But what I didn't understand in that moment is that he wasn't really asking who is Jesus, just for the knowledge part of it, but truly, is Jesus a personal savior to me?
Hi, welcome back to the Kids of the King podcast. Really excited to be joined here by two very awesome people. My youth pastor's wife. So if you want to introduce yourselves, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Costa. I'm the student pastor at First Baptist Universal City currently. And I've known Andres for 5 years at least now.
Maybe something like that.
Mhm.
Oh,
It's been too long.
yeah, it's been a little bit. So
Hi, I'm Sandy, and I am Alex's wife, not
Thought you could say your
Costa.
age.
No, I am not good. Well, I could.
um, yeah, I've learned so much from y'all. And so I hope that those listening can learn a lot as well. So y'all, it's a lot I think that we could talk about, but I first wanted to talk about just like y'all's life stories. Like, what was it like growing up? I know y'all have two different backgrounds as far as at least for the country you were born in. So yeah, what was life like growing up for y'all?
yeah, so for me, I grew up in Costa Rica, hence the Costa nickname. But I don't know. I mean, it was different um, because it's a third world country, but at the same time, like we were pretty blessed in a lot of ways. And so for me, you know, now that I'm here and now that I see my kids grow, there's a lot of things that I'm thankful that I you know went through when I was in Costa Rica growing up. But again, grew up in a Christian home with great parents who cared, and yeah, did all my schooling there until high school. So I finished high school at 17 before I moved here.
Okay. And you were a pastor's kid, right?
I was a pastor's kid, yeah, since my dad started in the ministry when he was like 18, I think, or 17, like really young. Um, my mom and my dad weren't married yet. They were literally dating when they started their first church. Um, and so my brother, who is 5 years older, came first, of course, and then myself. So yeah, all my life I've been in a pastor's house. So it's been good though.
That's cool.
Mhm.
What about you?
Well, I did not grow up in a Christian home. I come from a divorced family. My parents got divorced when I was 8 or 9, but it was, I mean, they were pretty much separated from when I was like 6 years old. Um, Pretty bad background, domestic violence, and all of that. And when we moved to the States, I'm originally from Mexico, central Mexico, but when
Mm.
we moved to the US, my grandma is the one who went to church. She took us to church. Even when we were little in Mexico, she would take us to church, and she and my grandpa were always um, contributing to the church that they were a part of there. But when my parents got married, my mom would take us to church, and my dad was not very fond of the idea of us going.
Mm.
So when we moved to Texas, my grandma's the one who took us to church, and she's the one who really led us to love God and to know Him and trust Him and all of that. So yeah,
So when did you move to the US?
summer of fourth grade. So I think I was like 8, 9, around there.
Yeah, we're going to, was it Baptist or Catholic or?
Assembly of God.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then is that the same?
Yeah, yeah, I grew up as Sons of God as well. My parents have always been. So
Gotcha.
we actually my dad was a pastor of a Baptist church for about a year and a half when I was in Costa Rica, but I don't remember anything. So he just told me later.
He never remembers anything.
Yeah, I do have bad memory. So probably
Well,
not the
it's first
most.
grade, so I don't think we can blame you
Well, I
for
don't,
that.
I don't know, I don't know how old I was. I was young though, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Could
So
have been first grade.
yeah, so both. I thought you said first grade. Yeah, good.
I think that no, I don't know. I was young,
Okay.
but I don't remember.
I don't. So y'all growing up in not exactly Christian households, but related to the church. When was it that y'all like encountered Christ and
Mm.
were saved?
Yeah, I've shared my story before. I think last time that I was on the podcast, I might have shared this, but for me, I was around 12 years old. It's kind of when I look back and pinpoint. And it was a summer camp, quote unquote, for us. In Costa Rica, it's a little different. We don't do summer camps like they do here, but kind of retreat, if you will. And one of those free time blocks that you get, I remember having a conversation with a leader. And of course, now that I'm older, I can look back and kind of piece things together. But uh, the gist of it was, the leader was trying to have a spiritual conversation with me, and my response was very pride filled. The question that I remember is he asked me, "Who is Jesus to you?" And my response was very much like, "I know everything about Jesus," kind of
Mm,
thing. Like, I grew up in church. I'm a pastor's kid. I've always been a very good student as well. Straight A's and things like that. So again, very pride filled of like I can tell you anything about Jesus, kind of thing. But what I didn't understand in that moment is that he wasn't really asking who is Jesus, just for the knowledge part of it, but truly, is Jesus a personal savior to me? And I always look back to that moment as the moment that I truly understood that Jesus wasn't a fairy tale. Because for the most part, growing up in a Christian home, again, I just accepted it because it's what I grew up with.
mm.
But it wasn't personal. It was more like, cool, yeah, Jesus walked on water, and yeah, God parted the Red Sea, and like all these cool stories that again I could probably tell you all about them, but I didn't believe them personally until around that age 12. That's when it started, and of course, as I grew up, my faith matured a little bit.
So would you say that growing up, the Bible and different accounts, were they like to you like history but unimportant, or were they just like you didn't know if they were true or not, but it didn't really matter?
Yeah, I don't know that I was that deep into it. It was more like it's what my parents believe. It's where I grew up. It's good. Like I don't want to go to hell. Of course, that was a primary one. Like nobody wants to go to hell. I don't want to do that. I think for me, more than anything, was just like I just hadn't considered it. Like I hadn't really, thought about it in a serious way. And I think part of it is age, right? Like before age 12, or even somewhat younger, you just don't have the full capacity, I think, to understand that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think it's hard for people to come to that point where if you've been growing up in the church and you've heard these stories from birth to
Mhm,
it to actually have that moment where it clicks and actually becomes something different.
mhm,
What was it like for you, Miss Sandy?
Um, I think for me, I was maybe around 12, 13. I was at a girls' ministry event in Assembly of God. We have just, girls' ministry based on age grade group. And we were in like a retreat also. Um, but I don't think it actually hit home with me until I was like 15, 16. We were at a um, youth convention, youth camp. I don't know how to describe it. It was a 3-day thing, and just with students from around Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and it was one of the bigger events for Assembly of God where we used to be, and so um, from then on, it's really where I started taking my walk with God more seriously. That it wasn't just like, oh, I have to go to church because it's what a good person does, or it's what I'm commanded to do or demanded to do by my grandma, who's telling me you have to go to church on Sunday and you have to go and do this. It was more of a, and I want to, and I get to go and do these things, so that I can learn more and grow in my walk with God.
So, was there a specific like moment, or do you think it was more like a time period that you
And it
remember?
was more of a time period, as he was talking and as I was reading through it, I was like, when did I, because it was more of that progressive, like, as you mature, that you're like, okay, well, and I know that people have here's the date that I gave my life to Christ. And I don't have the precise date, year, timestamp anywhere, so.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've thought about a little bit is like there are a lot of people who are like, I was saved at this very minute. And it's like, oh, okay. For me, it was something that I struggled to look back and like I also have a bad memory as well. And so remembering like when was the exact moment I was saved, it can be tricky, but, I think the important thing is not get, right, lost in the fact that, like, there's a specific moment.
Well, if I may say too, based on what you're saying, because to clarify, it's not that I remember like, or that I said that that day I got saved kind of thing. I think for me, it was that moment was a, catalyst, of course. Like that moment, I remember it to have made a difference in me.
Mm.
But I do believe that for most people, especially if they grew up in church, um, having a progressive, and I mean that in the word, obviously from
Growing.
point A to point B to point C to point D, type of salvation is not unheard of, and I don't think that's wrong either. I think sometimes, obviously, we look at Paul and we see such a dramatic and drastic change, but for most of us, we're not doing the things that Paul was doing either, right? So for us, we're quote unquote good kids, uh, and we can talk about that. But again, so and I think that's what I remember, being 17 or 18 and questions like, man, am I really saved? And kind of going through that many times because I just hadn't understood that faith and that idea of putting my trust in God wasn't supposed to be. It doesn't have to be this very emotional, grandiose moment. It's just this decision of like, I trust in Jesus to be the one who saves me. And I think if you simplify it more, if you have doubts about your salvation, you should be able to make the decision today and say, well, today I place my faith in Jesus, and today is when the Lord, saves you. And obviously, when you get to heaven, we can talk about when was the actual, second of that your name was written on the book, or however you want to describe it. But at that point, I don't think that matters. What matters is, have you placed your
Mhm.
faith? Can you confidently say, I trust in Jesus for my salvation? Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think about in Acts 2 where like the very first sermon that is
Mhm.
preached to like God fearing Jews, so people who were righteous in some respect, and you know they heard the sermon, and so they're like pricked to the heart,
Mhm.
and they just ask, "Well, what are we supposed to do?" And
Mhm.
Peter says, "Repent, be
Mhm.
baptized." And so it wasn't, yeah, they weren't all Paul or Sauls, right, who
Mhm.
were persecuting the church. They were God fearing Jews who
Mhm.
believed the gospel. But yeah, the important thing is that there is fruit in your life. There is
Mhm.
evidence that you have been born again. So what was that like? Like after y'all were saved, both in you know like middle school, high school age, what did the fruit look like in y'all's life afterwards?
So I think for me, mainly, and again, just because of how I grew up, it was diving to serve in the church. Like I remember very close to that time where I got to serve, in the audio team doing audio because that was the point of least resistance. And then I learned to play guitar, and obviously there's never enough musicians, so like I moved to be a worship team, and then serving in the youth. But a lot of it was just being connected there. um, One thing that I remember, and I've used this example before, is like I remember my dad was always like, go read your Bible. Um, and it was always the requirement before watching TV. Like if I wanted to watch TV, he's like, "Have you read your Bible yet?" So in a way, my routine was I would read Proverbs, or I would read a chapter of the Bible, just one chapter, just so that I can unlock, the TV kind of thing. And I remember that being a guilt based discipline, right? I was like, I have to do this so I can do, but that transition as I grew up. Um, so yeah, but I think serving was a big, big part of my faith growing and maturing, is just being in the church and doing things and wanting to serve. And yeah.
Yeah, I think for me too, I started co-teaching a first grade Sunday school class, and I loved it. And so then I took over 2 years after to do the kinder first grade, and then I went second and third grade with those same kids, and it was so cool to see them like in their little walk, of like, hey, I had you when you were in kinder, and then now you're in fifth grade, and now you're in middle school, and then also started serving in student ministry, like opening service, praying, and I remember, and I'm just thinking about it now too. Like it was such a daunting thing. Like I have to open service and I have to read my Bible and I have to pray out loud, and that's so scary. And because I was 17, 18, and it was like, how could I be doing this? Like I couldn't picture myself. And every time that they would be like, "Hey, Sandy, will you?" And it's like, I want to say no, but I'm but I'm gonna say yes because I want to serve. I want to do things. So, and then I also did. Um, Before we had Mac computers and Pro Presenter,
Mm.
we had the projectors,
Oh, wow.
and so it was the printed in the transparency paper,
That's crazy.
and so you had to get it right. And so perfectionist here,
That's a
like
skill.
it really was because when you had to switch the song because they were going fast, it was like, and then it's like if you messed up, you were literally at the front of the church and everybody saw you.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah.
I just imagine, like, this is tangent, but if they did the song where it goes, get up, get up," like, you'd have to be
Yes,
going
you really
fast.
did because you had the coritos and you
Yeah,
had
you
to
did.
for real like, "Wah."
Hey, it's a good thing we have technology now.
Yes.
So you also need to put them a specific way because obviously if you put it on the right
Mhm.
way, it's gonna project backwards or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I used to do that too. That was actually one of the first things I did. But it's funny. I think that mindset of serving though is really what makes a difference
Mhm.
in this. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
I agree.
No, what I just noticed just from, like, hearing both of y'all talk is, like, that fruit that was born was, like, it wasn't, like, perfection,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
and it never is. We get saved, doesn't matter how many years you've lived in a Christian household, like, there are things that don't make sense. There are things that you do in an imperfect way, like
Mhm,
reading the Bible, like, it was similar for me. My parents they'd say, like, "If you wanna play, PlayStation,
mhm.
like, you have to read the Bible." I might have just said read in general, but I think it was read the Bible, and so I would, like, go upstairs, turn my stopwatch on, and, like, read the Bible, and obviously that wasn't something that I specifically um, wanted to do out of a desire, but I know that those seeds that were in me have now come out and are continuing to bear fruit.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I guess as y'all kind of progress in that maturity going throughout high school, did y'all go to college? Like, what was that experience like for each of you?
Yeah, so in Costa Rica, the academic year goes from January through December. So I graduated at 17. I turned 17 in June, graduated in December, and in January I moved to the US. So I
Mhm.
was, January of 2010, I think it was, or no, 20 something, I don't remember.
Mhm.
I think 2010. Anyway, so yeah, I came to a small seminary. I thought it was a college university kind of thing. Um, long story short, ended up being not an accredited school. What that means is, what I did here in Texas was valid for Texas, but I couldn't transfer to any school. And so I did 3 years there, but technically they don't count, right? And so after those 3 years at a seminary, Assemblies of God Seminary. So after 3 years of that seminary, I went to just community college, Alamo colleges, and then restarted back again with a business degree. And then I went to an online school, got that business degree. And then, a few years later, I went back to Liberty for my MDiv. And then currently I'm at Southwestern Baptist doing my doctor of apologetics degree.
So,
Right. Long story.
awesome.
Been in school for a lot of years
Yes,
now.
yes, it is
Not
cool.
because I want to.
Seems like you haven't ever like not been out of school.
Honestly, I think so. What was it? Maybe like 2 years is, out of the 15 that I've been in the country, I think only maybe 1 or 2 years I haven't been in school.
Hmm,
It's awful.
that's wild. Is it-
Funny, two of his favorite words are learn often
Yeah.
and sure enough.
So not learn through school, learn on my own. Yeah.
on Duolingo, right?
Yeah. I lost my streak though. I'm back at zero.
That's unfortunate. What about you, Sandy? What did college look like?
I went to the university back home in Brownsville. I did 2 years. But I guess I had credits too from my high school years. I did a criminal justice magnet program.
Mm.
So I had already 18 credit hours that I went in with, which is super cool because we had like self-defense classes and like you had to run at the park with like your BDUs, like your police uniform, police uniform, quote
Huh.
unquote, and the big heavy boots, and you had like the fake guns to run around with. So it was really cool. So I did that class or those classes in high school, and then when I transferred to UTB, now UTRGB, I went in for my psychology degree.
Mm,
So I did 2 years there. Then I transferred to Southwestern Assembly of God University, now Nelson University in Waxahachie. And I did my undergrad in psychology, criminal justice, and biblical studies.
mm.
So it was majored in psych, minored in criminal justice and biblical studies, and my foreign language, which is I'm like, I think I cheated because it was, I clipped out of it. It was Spanish, but it's there. It's on a degree. Um, and now I just finished my first semester of grad school too for
That's
clinical
awesome.
counseling. So
That's cool.
mm,
So when you were at UTRGV, was that online or was that you were
in
in the valley?
person.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool, cool, cool. So when did I don't know, like sometime in this period y'all met, and so
Mhm.
what was that experience like, and when was it?
So I was towards the end of my so the seminar that I went to is a 3 year, which should have been a clue for the non accredited program. But anyway, so I did the 3 years, and then after the third year, because I was an international student, I was able to do an OPT, I think it's called, optional practicum training, which means like you get another year on your visa to practice whatever you study. So for me, because it was a ministry and church, then I could work at the school for another year, which they let me. It's a small school, so I was doing maintenance. I was doing dorm pastor with the guys, so I was in charge of the guys in the dorm. I was worship leader. I was chapel coordinator. I mean, literally a little bit of everything.
Right.
But it was good because it gave me a whole year of serving. I didn't get paid anything, but I was able to live at the school and eat there, and anyway, it was a blessing. But in that year, because I was already at a staff level at the school, one of my responsibilities was actually to go and promote the school. Like any events, of course, as a college, you're trying to recruit new students. Anyway, in that summer of I think summer of 2014, I got invited to preach as a staff member to 2013. That's right, summer 2013. I got invited to preach at an event. It was a student event here in town in San Antonio. And so when I went to preach, it was a middle school, high school event. And I got there, and Sandy was working with the girls part of it. So when I got there as a speaker, and then met everybody. I met her, and so the connection started there, but it was very quick. I always joke that she rejected me there because literally I just say hi to her, and then like 2 minutes later she's like, "Okay, hi," and I'm doing something else. Later she'll tell you, and I'm sure she'll say that she was dealing with some drama from middle school girls. But anyway, so that was a
I
Man,
was. I was.
yeah, that was one. I went. It was a youth rally, so I preached, did my thing, and then left. Didn't think much of it. That happened in the summer. In November for Thanksgiving in the Assemblies of God world, at least back then, they will have like youth conventions on Thanksgiving week, like that break. It's so weird. But anyway, my school sent me to Laredo to promote, and then her school sent her too as well. And so it was one of those things that when we look back, it's funny because I cannot make this up. As I'm getting there, I was myself and another student that I was taking. We're gonna have a booth in the lobby and set up all the stuff to promote. Right as I enter into the convention center, the very first person that I see is her, and I didn't know her. I didn't remember her name or anything, but I was like, I know you. Is what I remember saying. Like, I know you. And then she looked at me. We're kind of connected. It's like, oh yeah, whatever. And that that was a 3 day event, right? Usually, so my booth was the school that I was manning was on like on one side of the convention center. Her booth was literally on the other side. Like
Like
okay.
the pendulum
yeah,
ends.
Dang.
as far apart as you can be. But right next to me, there was a girl, a missionary girl that was trying to go to Vietnam,
Wow.
and she happened
she's
to
she's a really close friend of mine.
yeah,
Mm,
she happened to be good friends, and so throughout that weekend, we got to connect because she was coming to say, to talk to her friend, and again, it just happened that weekend where we just connected, and that's kind of where it started in some ways.
Mhm.
There's more to it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Um, I was busy.
Don't expose the middle school girls.
Well, middle school girls are rough
Mm,
sometimes, and they know it, we know it, and
everybody
it's
knows it.
everybody knows it. Yes. No, I didn't reject him. I was working. I think when I'm in work mode, I just get in. It's work mode. Yeah, and it was. We made a bet to see who paid more car insurance. So that we could like whoever loses like pays a coffee date. And so it was a week after convention. We were texting and then we were on the phone. I was driving back from the valley to San Antonio, and I think we stayed on the phone probably like my whole drive back. And then so I lost. I paid more car insurance than he did, even though he was an international student. Obviously, he paid anyway. Um,
Mhm.
so then we went on a first coffee date in December of 2013.
Mhm.
So
Just about.
you're telling me that your relationship started with you not upholding your word.
Hey, I
Basically, yeah, that's right. Tell her. No, I mean, part of it was like, we were texting, but because she was driving, she was like, "Hey, can we call instead?" It's like, "Yeah, let's do it." Because I remember I was in my dorm pastor dorm, which is just another dorm in the dorm. It's not great, great quarters. So we're chatting the whole time, and yeah, in my mind, it was like, how do I ask this girl out, right, in some way without being weird? Uh, which I'm sure I was probably, was 20, right? And yeah, I was about 20 years old, I think. And so basically, like the thing that came to mind is like, let's bet, let's do this. Like I like betting, challenges, if you will. But in my mind, I was like, man, I'm an international student. I've only had my license at that point for like a year or something. I was paying like, I don't know, like $250 of car insurance, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it was. And so I was like, there's no way she's paying more. Because I was like, let's bet, let's see who's paying more. And was paying more, which should have been a clue for a lot of ways because
excuse me.
her driving skills.
Wow,
It
I'm
was
a
some
great
accidents.
driver.
Yeah,
Why is your car insurance so high?
exactly.
I accidentally hit a friend's car,
Okay.
and so it was custom made color. So I couldn't pay out of pocket. I offered, and he was like, "No, it's going to be very expensive for you. So let's just call our insurance." It was still expensive regardless.
Yeah. Anyway, now we don't. Now our insurance is pretty good. We don't pay.
That's good. After y'all got married, it kind of went down.
Yeah, yeah. Now we have good driving records. So anyway, but that was a good way. Obviously, we got to go to Starbucks on our coffee date, which, again, we didn't know much.
we
Starbucks
we
was
were
the
very inexperienced coffee people.
Yeah, so Starbucks was the gold standard, which it is not. But yeah, anyway, so our relationship started at a Starbucks too, which is that's a
Interesting.
that's a black stain in our
Literally,
in our past,
when we got married,
mhm,
and we were heading to
in our honeymoon. Yeah.
yeah, we stopped at Starbucks on our wedding
Mhm.
attire
Hmm.
We got a coffee.
to get coffee.
Wow, I didn't know that y'all don't like Starbucks that
We
much.
don't.
We don't anymore.
Yeah, it's a good starter, but there's better coffee places.
Hmm.
Yes.
So what would y'all kind of share from like your relationship experience, like different things that you learned? I know y'all are both going through college and serving in various ministry opportunities. So what would you share like lessons learned?
I think over communication, I think that's always a downfall for people. And I'm not saying that we're perfect in any way because there's a lot of times that we're like, well, you didn't tell me this or you didn't tell me that. And but over communicating is definitely one of those like key things for any relationship. Um, Friendships, siblings, in marriage, and for us, one of the ways that we like over communicate honestly is through our calendar. We have a shared calendar where we see, okay, this is where what you're doing, this is where you're at. And sometimes miscommunication happens because it's not in the correct calendar.
Yeah, she thought the podcast was at like an hour later today,
Oh wow.
although
No,
it's
no, no.
on the calendar.
No, 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 no. It was on the calendar, but there were things that were happening. And then I was like, I thought he was showing up at 9. But it was not you. It was going to be my father in law who was showing up
Sure.
at 9.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wrote that down too, communication, which it's easier said than done.
Mhm.
I think most people struggle with communication. At least, my parents were not great communicators between each other, so I didn't have a great example. And her parents, obviously, they weren't great communicators either, as far as I know. But the other thing two things that I wrote down here is one is I think for a long time, and it's taken me again a decade almost to learn this, to truly learn it, is that you can only work on yourself, right? Like I think a lot of people in relationships, you either get into a relationship and the first thing you want to do is to change the other person, or as you're in relationships, you're expecting them to do something when truly you can't. Like the only person that can be changed is you by yourself, right? And it's really cool because again, obviously, now that Sandy and I have been doing this for a decade or so, is like the more that I work on me and I'm not in a selfish way, but just in a like I cannot change her. Like I need to work on my responses, on my attitude, on mine, but also seeking to inspire instead of just changing. So there's a lot of things that we've kind of come to the middle in some ways, right? In the ways that we do family stuff, or in the way that we have, done our finances, or that we have done our, whatever. We can kind of go down the list. But yeah, it's a lot of the time, especially when I started, I was just expecting her to change that, or to not do that, or to do this instead of just thinking like, what do I need to
Mhm.
change?
Hmm.
I think that's a big one. And then the second one too, that I don't know how to do this necessarily. I think it's something that you just gotta pray and ask God for wisdom, but is find somebody who has the same calling as you, right?
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things that I don't think that we planned this when we were dating necessarily, because we were so inexperienced. But at the same time, now that I look back, it's like, man, we both had the same calling, right? Calling to ministry, to do whatever God is calling us to do. Um, and I've heard many relationships where again, one person wants to, for example, they want to be a missionary across the world, and the other one is like, I don't want to leave my street.
Yeah.
And so a lot of their issues is that because they just don't have this in calling, right? And again, I don't know how to like, I don't know if you can just do a checklist and I find the person with this in calling, but I do think it's a prayer that
Mm.
you should be praying that your spouse, especially if you're called to ministry, if you already have that you'll find a spouse that would not only support you, but will do it with you. And
Mm.
I think that's different, right? Because people can support you, but they can also be right there on the trenches with you. And I think Sandy's been one for me, and the other way too. I think we support each other in our calling.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's important when you're dating or even pre-dating, because I mean, we didn't, even though we went on I think you guys don't call it like courting. It's a courting thing, getting to know a person before you're official. And for us, I think it was like a 2-month, 3-month thing before we actually made it a thing, and to where he met my boss. Like my boss took him out to lunch, and that was like one of the scary things in my life. My boss at the moment was like my spiritual dad. So he's like, I need to go meet with this guy. I'm like, we're not even boyfriend girlfriend yet. Like we're just friends who are talking. And then we met with his bosses too, and we went for coffee. And it was like, one of those intimidating things, but you also get to know the person, and you see like what do they like? What is he like? And that's one of the things that my mom immediately noticed about him. Like he has such a servant's heart, that he's willing to do anything, like even when we got married, like some of his friends from school, and I mean, it's part of who he is, but it's also ingrained in the school that he went to. Like she was just blown away that they were so willing to jump in to help and serve, and stack chairs and do things. Like we had to move our wedding last minute indoors because it was gonna start raining.
Oh, wow.
And they just did the things. Like I literally could not set foot out because of my hair and makeup already done.
Mhm.
But everybody was like so willing to jump in and do the things. But getting to know the person, but absolutely prayer, because it really is like a make it or break it. I mean, you can push through. Like once you're married, you like, I hate to use the word you're stuck, but that's who you chose to marry. But I think when you get to know the person, what what do they like? What do they not like? What ticks them off? That you really begin to understand them. I don't think you fully understand a person fully,
Mhm.
um, but you mature and you grow, um, and you lower expectations too. I think you mentioned that of expectations of. Um, I think sometimes we set really high expectations for people, um, because we're just selfish. Um, I know that I was, and it's just one of those things that you have to work on to say, okay, do I expect him to hold my hand every single time we're in public? And it's like, no, that's kind of unrealistic, um, and other things that, yeah.
Well, I remember in seminary, we had this one professor that who always would always say that, it's like you want a man of God or you want a woman of God, but then you're not a man of God, right? Like, and so you're wanting somebody that is like all up here and perfect, but then you're not living that way, right? And so that was always something that stuck with me is like, man, again, you kind of have to work on yourself. And that's one of the things that I see in students and relationships nowadays that I think is the hardest part is that students tend to jump. And by what I mean students is like anybody 12 and up, and which if you're in middle school, you should have been in a relationship, but that's
Your
just my opinion.
babies.
That you jump very quickly to the relationship part of it
Mhm.
without knowing a person, how they behave, what they were like. And so that's something that we always encourage students anytime they ask us is, learn to be friends. Like go hang out in groups and do things because you get to see somebody, the good and the bad, as much as you can from a non-romantic
Mhm.
perspective. And that's hard because the moment that the feelings get involved and they get shared, then your views clouded. It's just the way that it is, right? Everybody's the same way. Like if you're in love, quote unquote, like if you like this person, if you're think that she's the most beautiful girl, you're gonna ignore the things that may be bad. And that's one of those things that I remember, going through college and having those thoughts like, man, this is the girl that I want to marry. But then talking to friends and family, like, no, don't do that. And now that I'm on this side, I was like, I'm glad that I listened to people that love me and care for me and that could see it from the outside perspective. Um, because yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people make decisions when when they don't have all the information, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so anyway, again, that's hard, but especially if you have parents that love you, parents that are godly parents, I would listen to your
Yeah.
parents, a lot more than I would listen to, you know,
This
your
podcast.
heart or this podcast. Yeah, for us, honestly. But yeah, relationships are tough, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. I heard someone in a book I was reading. I guess I didn't hear them. I read it, but
You read it out loud.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard myself. No, he's breaking down like the science of it, talking about like infatuation, and
Mhm,
says like I'm sure you could probably go into this because you're doing psychology now, but like we're if you're in a state of infatuation, neurologically like amplify someone's strengths
mm,
and minimize their weaknesses. And so it's great to hear, and I think very helpful to hear for both of y'all that you went
mhm,
to different people that you trusted and respected, because there are major, right, objective, groundbreaking, like, or I
mhm,
guess deal breaking things in a relationship. One of those things that both of y'all mentioned was like ministry.
mhm.
I know that not everyone is called specifically to go into full time ministry, but what did like y'all's ministry callings look like, and how did y'all kind of reconcile that when you were in your relationship process?
So I don't know. I think part of it is I think, speaking from now, looking back, of course, it's always easier.
Mhm.
Hindsight is 2020, but 2010, 2020. I think for me, like what makes me look back and think is you just gotta trust that God is sovereign, right? And I think a lot of the times I had this mindset like, man, I'm gonna mess up God's plan for my life. I'm gonna do something that blows everything up, and then now like I'm gonna be, left on the street alone, in the rain. But the truth is that I mean, God is so much bigger than that, right?
Mm.
And now that as I'm getting older and as I'm still going through this, something that I'm learning is if I'm seeking to glorify God, if I'm seeking to honor God, for the most part, the decisions that I make, if they're not, obviously there's sinful decisions that I can make, or there's wrong decisions, there are things that can hurt people. But if I'm honestly doing my best to honor God, I think God will lead and direct you. God will open doors, God will close doors.
Mhm.
God is not gonna be one that, again, is surprised by my decision to ask this girl out, or to quit this job, or to accept this offer. And I would put so much emphasis on, like, man, if I can just make the right decision, as if there was only one decision that was right. But that's just not how it works. God is so big, so sovereign, that whatever decision I made had good consequences, had things that were positive. And guess what? It has some things that I had to deal with, right? Like, by moving to this country, there's a lot of positive, but there were some negatives too, right? The point, I'm trying to make is, make a decision that you're wanting to honor God, and allow God to be God in that, and trust them. And when you look back, you'll be able to see a thread of God's, you know, hand over your life, at least over mine and over my parents and the people that I've talked to, who kind of has this mindset of, like, you don't have to stress about every single decision so much, as if you're going to break God's will. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah. Uh, I disagree. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you can. I mean,
Well, I'm just
it is
kidding.
my opinion. You can disagree.
That's good. And I know that, like, you were saying that you were already in ministry, Sandy, and did you feel specifically called to ministry, or was it more of just you were just serving in church?
Um, yes and no. I think when you open yourself up to the opportunity of just doing God's will in your life, I think, we're all called to do something for God. And it's a matter of you using your gifts and talents that God has blessed you with to honor Him. And for me, it's always been, how can I love people better? And how can I show hospitality? And so for me, it was always, kids ministry, student ministry, that God was opening doors. Like, even when I went to SAGU, immediately when they had like that ministry fair of, like, where are you going to go serve? And it's like, okay, well, kids ministry, they had this once a month, every second Saturday. I think it was like, you would go to the streets of,
Mhm.
I can't, DeSoto, Texas, and you would partner to do like sidewalk ministry.
Mm.
So you was kids ministry, like on the go, literally. Like, you pack up your car, you go to a playground, and you serve that community. And then I started serving at a church plant, also doing kids ministry. Because it was a church plant, you did a lot of things, and so I sang on the worship team. Like, don't put me to sing on the worship team now. Like, it's really, I will do it if nobody else is gonna do it. But it is really not like my cup of tea to to serve God. And I'm like, please don't ever put me to sing up on stage ever. Um, but it was always kids, students, girls, uh, and then, wherever God opened a door, it was an obvious yes, like, let's do it. Um, and so, yeah.
Hmm. So, what does y'all's ministry look like? Like, after marriage, obviously, youth pastor now, but what does it look like over the years?
Yeah. So, again, a lot of it, I don't think, has been necessarily planned. It's been more where God has opened doors for us. So, when we were engaged, I was the dorm pastor at the school. And so one of the conversations we had was, like, it would be weird for me to get married and then bring my wife into the guy's dorm, right? So it's like, it's probably not, this stage of my life of being in charge of the dorm, it's kind of ending, right? Like, the time at the school, like, again, I love the school, they taught me a lot, but the time was ending. It's one of those things that when I look back, one of the prayers that I've always had, and I think this has been key, is to ask God, if my time is not here anymore in this place, you know, like, take me out. Like, I don't want to be here just because it's comfortable, or I don't want to be here just because it's where I've been. And naturally, the three moves that I've had ministry wise have been very natural, where I left in good standing. But at the same time, when I look back, it's like, it was my time to leave. Like, if I would have stayed longer, I would have been bitter. I would have been, gossiping. I would have been complaining. but God gave me an opportunity to be out. And so wait, anyway, again, we were about to get married, so literally we just, in fact, Sandy helped me with this. She just helped me found some jobs online. We was like, I knew, again, that's why I went to school, right, to be in church. Is like, whoa, let me find a job online, and just we just look around online, and the job opening that happened to accept me was a preschool teacher part time at a mega church here in town, Community Bible Church. And so I just apply, and my mind wasn't necessarily like I'm gonna go into ministries. Like I'm just gonna go do a job, right?
Mm,
And it was with kids, which and my parents will tell you that I'm not. Growing up, I wasn't probably close to kids ministry, but God opened that door, and I did, and I loved it. I got to teach chapel and got to grow in it with 4 and 5 year olds, and in that time there, a couple years doing that is when the middle school position in that church opened up. And same thing again, the friends, the connections that we had, they're like, you should apply to it, and I did, and I got the job, right? And then now I was in the middle school role, doing volunteer training and volunteer coordinating, and then the church went to a change, transition of leadership, and then my job role kind of shift from middle school to associate. Now I was doing middle school and high school, and I was helping and filling in. Um, and then out of the blue, I got a call from a church saying, "Hey, we're looking for a youth pastor. Your name came up. Do you want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, let's talk about it." We talk, and they're like, "No, we don't want you. You don't have the education that we want." I was like, "Okay, cool. Like I'm good where I'm at." And now, honestly, I was good where I was at, I
Mm,
think. And then about a week or two later, I get called back. It's like, "Actually, do you still want to do it?" And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And then now it's where I've been for 5 years, right? And that was right before COVID too, which was very interesting. But again, my point being that I've never been like necessarily looking for something.
mm,
My goal has always been like, I'm here. If I need to do preschool ministry, I'll do that. If I need to do worship, I'll do that. If I need to do middle school, high school students, I'll do that. If I need to go do senior adults, I'll do that. And it's been really cool because the last decade, I've done a lot of different types of ministry, and it's been really, really cool.